wrong?
I just got laid off. I hate my life.
Oh, so you think you're gonna look for a new job?
Well, I'm gonna look for 4 weeks, but if I don't find one by then, I'm gonna have to go back to school.
So you might not be in the labor force anymore?
What's that?
My name is Gilmore, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about what it means to be in the labor force. First, we need to discuss the two groups that make up the labor force: employed people and unemployed people, all of at least the adult age of 16. Employed. An employed person is someone who has worked as a paid employee, worked in their own business, or even worked as an unpaid worker in a family business. Unemployed. An unemployed person is someone who does not currently have a job, who is available for work, and may have even looked for a job in at least the previous 4 weeks. So there you have it. Now you know what it means to be either unemployed or employed with regards to the labor force.
Well, if you go back to school after 4 weeks, you won't be in the labor force because you won't have a job and you won't be looking for a new one.
Wait, so if I work in my mom's family business, but she doesn't pay me, am I in the labor force?
Huh.
We need to discuss the difference in what it means to be in the labor force versus not being in the labor force. We now know that being in the labor force means you're either employed or you're unemployed, at least 16 years old, and that you've looked for work in the previous 4 weeks. But what if you haven't looked for work in the previous 4 weeks? Then you're classified as not in the labor force, meaning you don't have a job and you haven't looked for one in quite some time. And to answer Kayla's question about whether or not she as an unpaid worker in a family business is included in the labor force, we refer back to part 1, where we see that an unpaid worker, 16 years old or older, in a family business, is a part of the employed section of people. Since the labor force is made up of all people both employed and unemployed, Kayla is in fact a part of the labor force.
Well, isn't it gonna be hard for me to find a new job?
No, Raina, don't worry. You'll be able to find a job.
You can look at the unemployment rate to see if it's going to be difficult to find a new job or not.
Yeah, doesn't the labor force participation rate also play a role?
Yeah, labor force participation rate does go into the unemployment rate.
Oh, so then how do you calculate the labor force participation rate and the unemployment rate?
I think there's a formula for that.
In order to complete your study of the labor force, we need to discuss the labor force participation rate and the unemployment rate. First, the labor force participation rate. We know that the labor force is made up of all employed and unemployed people 16 years old and older. But what about all the people of this age that are not employed? Well, they are counted in what's called the adult population. The adult population combines all 3 categories of employed, unemployed, and people not in the labor force over the age of 16. But how do we know what percentage of people in this adult population are in the labor force? Well, we use what we call the labor force participation rate formula. The formula is written like this. Labor force participation rate equals the total number of people in the labor force divided by the total number of people in the adult population, all that times 100. By using and manipulating this formula, you can figure out how many people are in the adult population, how many people are in the labor force, or how much participation there is from the entire group. Next, let's look at the unemployment rate. Since we have the knowledge of both what an unemployed person is and what the labor force is, this formula is very easy. The unemployment rate equals the number of unemployed people in the adult population divided by the total number of people in the labor force, all that times 100. This formula is used by many economists to determine how well the economy is doing at providing jobs in our country. In conclusion, now you know all about what the labor force is, what the difference between employed and unemployed people are, and how their participation affects the employment rates across the country.
Well, wow, guys, I learned a lot about the labor force today. I think I'm going to keep looking for a job so I can stay in the labor force. I guess working at that hot dog stand wasn't the best anyways.
Sounds good.